Well. Here we are again, talking about another Norwich City loss this time. Norwich lose 3-2 to Watford away from home in a game where the circumstances were slightly different. Norwich decided to take the lead, but as soon as Watford got themselves back into the game, I mean, it's almost like we threw the towel in and said, here you go, come and take your 3 points, because, I don't know, it's really getting difficult to differentiate these Norwich City performances, because we talk about the same things week in, week out, even after Norwich have won. The irony being the last 2 wins, I was on holiday and an illness prevented. I'm sure you can probably still hear it a bit, but illness prevented the match review for the game on the weekend. But things are not good enough at Norwich City at the moment, and as a fan who just wants something to believe in, there's nothing. And I really don't know where Norwich City think they're going. There is a direction that we can all see that they're going, whether they can see it internally and they're choosing to ignore it, or whether they don't believe that what will come is going to, then I really don't know. Norwich City at the moment are really poor. It is a group of not very good footballers being managed by an inept, washed-up manager who I can no longer play the, well, he seems like a nice guy card, because it's pathetic at this point. Norwich City's standards have decreased drastically, yet at Carrow Road, the place almost looks full. Travelling fans tonight who made that, it's not the longest trip in the world, but also at the same time, it's a Tuesday night for a team that have given them absolutely nothing to believe in. Fans will continue to support Norwich, and it's at the point now where it's like, why and what do they have to believe in? It's absolutely nothing. As I said a moment ago, it's really difficult to pick out what game you're talking about when you describe a Norwich City performance at the moment, because things are consistent. They're consistently terrible. But let's look at tonight in isolation. The starting lineup, I put out a bit of an angry tweet before the game, because I was just looking at that 11 thinking, I don't recognise that. That's not the Norwich City I love. That's just a group of players where you really don't know what they're doing at Norwich City, in the sense of they don't fit the profile, the image we were once sold. They're not particularly charismatic on or off the pitch. There really is very little to even recognise when you look at that Norwich City starting 11, and it's just bizarre to me that going into a game against a team who were a few places lower than us in the division, I know that doesn't really mean too much in the Championship these days, but for a team that I'm not going to sit here and say Norwich should be beating, but should definitely be putting in a semi-decent performance against, and maybe getting a point away from home in a very important game off of the back of 2 wins, to sit there with the lack of belief that I had, and I'm sure many also lacked, if that makes any sense at all. I'm sure you know what I'm getting at. To be sort of sat in this position, it's just, I don't know. It's such a difficult thing. It's such a difficult thing to pick out, and I mean, we've circled enough times what needs to change, how at a higher level at the club, before Ben Napper even arrived, they didn't recognise it, is just mental. They've really pushed the narrative, haven't they, of supporting David Wagner. And the most damning comment for me is Neil Adams at the fan forum the other night, when he made that comment about looking around the edges as opposed to basically sacking the manager straight away. It's a bit like, oh, come on, it's a great logic, but don't, when a manager really needs sacking, that's not when you want to hear that quote. But as I said, back to the game in isolation, the first 25 minutes, I thought was all right. Norwich scored from the corner against all odds, and then Hwang scored quite a decent goal, a great strike, and one that I sort of look back on thinking the goal I should save, but then actually it's just a good goal. But that those first 25 minutes in isolation, compared to the hideous performance that followed, it was kind of an ideal away performance, in the sense of Norwich was soaking up pressure. Watford didn't look particularly dangerous. They grabbed their goals, and we all knew it wasn't going to be a case of shut up shop and win 2-0. We all knew that was going to be the case. But there's two things. There's the first thing, which is Norwich really should have taken advantage of the fact that the crowd had turned. You could clearly see that. I could clearly see that watching from home. I'm sure the fans who had made the trip could really sense that as well. But also, the second point, which is, and I'm fully negative in the sense of I have nothing positive really to say at this point. So, if you're looking for some sort of positives, please click off the video now. The second point being, you're actually sat there with a real sense of impending doom, and it is just a case of how and when and why will this go wrong. We made a point of it on the podcast recently in terms of George Long is just diabolical. He's really not very good at all, and it makes me very grateful for Angus Gunn. The first goal, basically straight through him. That then opens the floodgates to the second, which is a little bit unlucky, but again, a goalkeeper with any presence at all will make that difficult for the attacker, not sort of whatever the hell George Long was doing. And I mean, I don't care about this group of players enough to be fussed about picking out names, so I'm not even going to try and play that card of, I don't want to pick out names. I mean, he was terrible tonight. I think he made a couple of saves, which, sure. And then that third goal, you just sort of like, there it is again. There's that feeling, and that's the problem with Norwich City at the moment. There's nothing for fans to believe in from a tactical perspective. This idea of looking at Norwich City and knowing how they play, there's nothing to sort of think, oh, well, okay, if someone comes on and we tweak slightly, we can do something else that we're all right at, or we can do something else, or something along those lines. As well as personnel, you don't look at any particular players and think, right, your quality is going to get us out of this situation. You can argue Gabi Sara and maybe recently Hwang to an extent, which is, for me, just a real indictment on the state of play. But there really aren't any players, especially in the positions where you look at, any team, and like your wingers should be the ones who get you excited to watch Norwich. For us, it's Onel Hernandez. And I'm sick to death of Onel Hernandez. I am sick to death of watching his performances. The guy, it's not like he's some 21-year-old up-and-coming raw talent, because it's what he plays like. He plays like some raw talent who just needs a bit of coaching and refining, and there's a player in there. He's been around the block several times for Norwich. He's left Norwich, I think, twice and come back. Teams who we sent him out on loan to didn't want him, yet he, again, as an example, is suddenly good enough to be starting every game. And it's pathetic. It is an absolute disgrace in terms of where Norwich City are at the moment. Danny Bart in left centre-back. And again, I mean, I will play the card where I feel a little bit sorry for him because he's played a couple of games, but he doesn't look like a professional footballer on the ball. In terms of the technique and the way he kicks the ball, he does not look like a professional footballer. His header was all right. Defensively, or not even defensively, just winning the ball in the air, he's all right. But like kicking the ball in a team that wants to progress through the thirds quickly as opposed to being possession-based, it's just, what is anyone thinking putting him... I say anyone. What is David Wagner thinking putting him on the left? I'd rather have Shane Duffy. And that is really a case of... I don't even know what to compare it to. Like, that is the state of things at the moment. Go back to 2 years ago and say, oh, I'd rather have Shane Duffy in left centre-back than Danny Bart. You would have laughed and thought, whoever would have said it has gone insane. It's just, it's so bad at the moment. It's so bad, and we all know what needs to happen. David Wagner needs to go ASAP. But even on the horrendous streak we were on, there was all this outpouring of love. So God knows what 2 wins has done to that in terms of that time that he's going to be given. This squad is in dire need of a refresh, because what was the average? I think Connor tweeted before the game on Saturday, the average age was like 29.8 or something, which is, I mean, you spend 5, 6 years trying to do one thing, and by the end of it, you're actually in in my opinion, on the pitch in a worse position than when you found it, which is quite some achievement. It's just, I don't know, it's such a difficult thing to and I keep saying that because it's such a difficult thing to, find new things to talk about. That second half from Norwich was abysmal. I think the only threat we really had was Dimi Yanulis, and it's a bit like, okay, your left back's your only threat, and even then, he's just getting frustrated and, not diving, but, pardon me, really throwing himself around. Questions tactically, I mean, questions can't be asked. I don't think there's any more questions to ask. It's, I don't know, Norwich are in such a state at the moment. It's really worrying. And do you know what? I was listening to the Pinkham pod today, sorry. And, there was this idea of, well, relegation isn't something we need to worry about, which, okay, sure, let's not worry about that. But progression, what does that look like? How do we achieve that? What does that mean anymore at this point? What does progression mean? Because at the moment, this season is a bust, is a complete write-off. But what is next season if this season is deemed as mildly acceptable? Because at the moment, it's acceptable. It's accepted by the board because David Wagner is still in post. And the comments really aren't critical at all. So, from my perspective, I think that the board of my football club think that the state we're in is acceptable. For whatever they say, actions speak a lot louder than words, and their actions are to not try and actually change anything. It's to sign a bunch of 30-year-olds who are well past it to play for a manager who's well past it. But impressively, we've gone on a massive tangent again. It's dumb and pointless trying to talk about the games in isolation because it's the same old stuff. But yeah, in more exciting news, the live streams shall be back nice and soon, of which there will be some giveaways if you tune into those. So at the very least, come and show your face and validate me, because that's all I really want. But Norwich at the moment, oh, goodness me, what a mess. I mean, if you're not a Norwich fan and, if anything, if you dislike Norwich, it's great viewing. But things really need to change, and they really need to change quickly. I haven't actually consumed any of the post-match content yet. If I look at, I don't know why I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it anyway, because I'm a football fan. It's in my nature to just be an idiot. But if I see a comment from David Wagner, which is anything along the lines of, well, we were okay, I think I might just have to, I don't know. What can you do? I really don't know. You can stop watching and not go to the matches and do something better with your time, but that's not an option, as I'm sure if you're watching this video at this point, you are familiar with that feeling. But yeah, head's gone. Football club is going down the drain fairly quickly. Stuff needs to change. Content's come, live streams, all that good stuff. But you can just watch me and George and whatever poor guests we decide to rope in, just be quite sad about the state of affairs at Norwich City. But yeah, beyond that, try and enjoy the rest of your evening or day, whenever you're watching this. Like, comment, subscribe, all that nonsense. Ciao, ciao.